Hello and welcome to The Perspective. I'm your host Rafae Khawaja, and in today's show we'll be deliberating on our topic, Balochistan's turbulent landscape, Corps Commanders Security Assessment. The 268th Corps Commanders Conference was held at the General Headquarters in Rawalpindi and was chaired by the Chief of Army Staff, General Munir. The Army leadership vowed to counter nefarious designs of the hostile forces, and the statement was issued after the 268 Corps Commanders Conference. If we talk about in detail what happened in the Corps Commanders Conference, discussions included geostrategic environment, the national security challenges and Pakistan's strategic response. It was also reiterated that no disruption of peace in Balochistan province will be allowed, and the army to also assist in enforcing strict legal action against the illegal economic activities happening in the country, which of course contribute to terror financing as well. The Balochistan province has witnessed a surge in terrorist attacks. If we talk about the backdrop of the statement coming from the Corps Commanders Conference, with the most recent terror attack being the Jafar Express train attack. It was a train Peshawar bound with 440 passengers on board, and it was hijacked by terrorists and footage from the Balochistan Liberation Army. Two-day operation was held by the country's security forces, in which all 33 terrorists were neutralized. A whole of the nation approach was also to be concerted or to eradicate this menace of terrorism from the country. That was the backdrop of the 268th Corps Commanders Conference. We'll be deliberating on the different aspects regarding Balochistan security environment and what was reiterated in the Corps Commanders Conference by the Army leadership. In the studios, we've been joined by Mr. Shahryar Khan, who's a security analyst. Along with that, we've been joined by Air Vice Marshal retired Ijaz Malik, who's a defense analyst. And on phone line, we've been joined by Wajih Abbasi, who's an analyst. I'd like to thank you all, gentlemen, for your time and being part of the conversation. Starting off with Air Vice Marshal, Mr. Ijaz. So, Balochistan security landscape, how do you comment on it with regards to the recent terror attacks that we've been seeing and Pakistan's security forces' response to this terror, this surge in these terror attacks?
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. As regard Balochistan, Balochistan situation, if we see in the larger context of the terrorism and militancy, which we are facing almost on our entire western border, be it KP or Balochistan. So Balochistan is part of that larger context, but there are certain peculiarities as far as Balochistan is concerned. And the target in Balochistan is not only, the state of Pakistan, the state institutions, but actually there are collisions of so many, internal and more than that, external players who do not want Balochistan to be considered by anyone in the region or globally as a peaceful area, a stable area, because they want the process of development, socio-economic development, which started with the CPEC going through and ultimately terminating on the coastal city of Gwadar. They want that process to be stalled. So that is one peculiar thing as far as Balochistan is concerned. And obviously the common denominator is Indian-backed and raw, supported militancy. But then again in Balochistan, they find, an easy fodder for their nefarious designs, and that is some dissident elements, and then some people who are victim of a narrative being built, against the state of Pakistan, a narrative of socio-economic deprivation. So these are the factors which ultimately, can be, summed up as the contributory factor for the militancy in Balochistan.
Definitely. Mr. Shahryar Khan, when we talk about the dynamics in Balochistan, of course, CPEC and the Gawada port, and of course now with the Gawada International Airport also being operational, we know there's a lot of development that we've seen with regards to infrastructure, with regards to the minerals that we're seeing that are being now capitalized on Balochistan, and the other development that we see with regards to public welfare. And at the same time, we see this surge in terror attacks undermining the development of Balochistan province. What would you say about that?
So Rafae, thank you so much for inviting me today. Whenever there's a discussion on socio-economic development and uplift of Balochistan, obviously there are like a lot of like projects that are taking place when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to investments in mines and minerals, and obviously indirectly socio-economic uplift of the people of Balochistan. So this is exactly the narrative that is coming from the BLA and some other organizations over there as well. The narrative that is coming out is of socio-economic deprivation. So when it comes to countering these organizations, the government of Pakistan obviously is countering them in the kinetic domain, which obviously comes around to about the Azm-e-Istehkam military operation. Other than that, there's also a whole domain in non-kinetic measures that the government of Pakistan is also taking. And this whole discussion on the socio-economic uplift of Balochistan is in line with that area. Other than that, other than the socio-economic uplift and getting the people on board and including them in the development processes, other than that, regional collaboration or regional cooperation, that's like also something very important.
Yeah.
And all of these initiatives that you discussed and we continue on discussing, I think there needs also to be a holistic strategy on the government side in which they can basically counter this narrative coming from BLA and other organizations and inform the public of Balochistan that these projects are already underway. And the local population of Balochistan will be included in the socio-economic uplift through these projects. And a lot of like investments is already coming in, and you also mentioned about the Rekodik mine as well. And they have also developed a development model in which local populations are included in that process. Yes, socio-economic change will not come overnight. It takes time. And obviously the fissures that are emerging in Balochistan and the public and the resentment, that's not something that has come about in the last like 2 years. It's a decades long deprivation that the people have felt. We agree to that. And now the government of Pakistan is bringing investment into the province of Balochistan. It might take time, but the development will happen. What the government has to do is to basically make it inclusive, to involve the local population, give them economic opportunities, and involve them in the socio-economic development of Balochistan. That's already underway, and it will continue on gathering momentum.
Definitely important points raised, including Wajih Abbasi in the conversation as well. When we talk about the socio-economic factor in Balochistan province, of course, with we know stable economic environment comes from a safe and secure environment and a stable environment. And when we talk about the Balochistan's dynamics in particular, we've seen a surge in the terrorist attacks, specifically by the BLA, the TTP, the Majid Brigade. How do you comment on the security situation and creating an enabling environment while at the same time dealing with the security situation? We'll try reconnecting with him. Moving on to Air Vice Marshal Mr. Ijaz. So when we talk about the socio-economic factor and how you also mentioned there's hostile forces that are playing their part as well in that, we know at the same time there's a lot of work being put in by the government to address the development in Balochistan province, but at the same time we see this surge in terrorist activities, and as you mentioned in your previous answer as well, the hostile forces such as those operating from within India becoming a threat to not only just the development of Balochistan province in particular, but also a threat to CPEC and the regional connectivity that comes with Central Asian countries, as a matter of fact, as going on and under the light of the Belt and Road Initiative. We're having trouble listening to you, Air Vice Marshal. I think you're muted, your mic.
I would repeat, if we just see past about 15 years, 15 to 20 years, a lot of money has been spent by the Federation for the socio-economic development of Balochistan. But unfortunately, the culture and the tribal system of Balochistan, the political system of Balochistan, and extremely poor governance with successive governments there, barring few, the dividends of that investment hasn't gone to the grassroots level to the people of Balochistan. And the unfortunate part is that we have not been able to counter the narrative wherein we can make these people realize that the problem does not lie with the Federation or other provinces, but it's within their own tribal structure which inhibits the harvesting of these dividends. If you just see in past decade, Pakistan army has done a tremendous effort. They are not only involved in the kinetic operation, under compulsion, but they have also supported the infrastructure development. We have maximum number of cadet colleges, which are quality educational institutions, both for boys and girls in Balochistan. These numbers are much higher than any other part of Pakistan. The medical facilities are also being developed, but definitely more needs to be done. And but there is a disconnect that we have not been able to engage people. Particularly, I would say we have to engage the youth, because they are easy prey to the enemy propaganda and these negative narrative against state of Pakistan. We need to bring them on board and develop certain more skill centers across Balochistan, from where the qualified human resource can be inducted in the future projects which are coming on the sidelines of CPEC.
Right, including Wajih Abbasi in the conversation as well, as has joined us as we were talking about the security dynamics in Balochistan and how the statement coming out from the Corps Commanders Conference, creating an enabling environment for socio-economic development, at the same time dealing with terrorism in the province. How do you think the government can balance between that two, and of course how the people of Balochistan province themselves can also contribute towards their socio-economic development by playing their part in this war against terror?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. There are two different issues. One is the current situation of law and order because of the different terrorist organizations working in Balochistan, and the other is the socio-economic development. One thing we must be very clear about is that there should be zero tolerance against the terrorism, and there should be no apologetic approach towards the terrorists, and that they are sort of misguided people, they are aggrieved and things like that. Because the people who are behind these activities are against the state of Pakistan. There is no concern about the development of Balochistan or the improvement of a lot of people of Balochistan. To promote their own objectives. They don't want development of Balochistan. They don't want improvement in the lot of people of Balochistan. They just want to use these things to promote their own objectives. So that is a part. They should be dealt with accordingly. Now let's come to the socio-economic development. This is a long-standing issue in all the areas, in different areas of the country, that they have fallen behind some of the other areas. We must keep it in mind that at the time of independence, the difference in development between some of the areas and other areas, like especially some areas of Punjab and other areas of the country, was a lot worse than what is today. And over the years, a lot of development has taken place all over the country, and different areas have been brought up to the standard of other parts of the country. And these type of activities or these type of projects are still going on. But one thing we must keep in mind that for development of the people, you need the economic opportunities, and you need people to generate their own income. Now, how the income is generated? Income is not generated just because of the government's investment policies or government's putting in money there somewhere. Government economic activities are generated by the private enterprises. Private enterprises come through come if you give people and money, it's protection. Now, let's see, in Balochistan, the 94% of the area of Balochistan is outside the police control. It's the area. It's under the levies. So normal police system is not there. So as long as you don't have efficient policing system, the investor will not go in. And then some of these people who are using these terrorist activities, over the years and over the decades, in fact, they have been promoting this idea that outside people shouldn't come into Balochistan, and they have been making it difficult for people to invest in those areas. And they have been making it difficult for the people to go in and do economic activities in Balochistan.
Definitely. Definitely, very important points raised. Mr. Shahryar, when we talk about, as the conversation has built up, when we talk about the hostile forces, how they're playing their part in destability in Balochistan province, and when we talk about the security situation there, we've also seen how in the conversation it came up that there's this cultural factor as well. When we talk about the situation of the province, we've also seen in the recent past there were examples like those of Gulzar Imam Shambe, who laid down the weapons and became a part of the mainstream when they realized that socio-economic development for the people of Balochistan is better than taking arms against the state. How do you comment on this situation in particular with regards to how the security dynamics are evolving in Balochistan, and considering the responsibility of the Baloch people as well to play their part in countering the nefarious designs of these hostile forces as well?
So Rafae, first of all, we have to understand the difference between an insurgency and a terrorist organization. So what we are experiencing now in Balochistan is different from the TTP situation in KP. So that's a terrorist organization. When it comes to BLA and the situation, the security dynamics in Balochistan, it's like more of an insurgency. Yeah. The strategy for going after or eliminating insurgency is quite different as compared to the strategy that is required for dealing with the terrorist organization. When it comes to an insurgency, unfortunately, they have a lot of roots in the local society and local population, and there's some sort of a soft corner of the local population when it comes to an insurgency. When it comes to the regional dynamics, we know this very clearly, and through various means, that a lot of BLA support is from across the border as well. So whenever there are military operations or intelligence based operations, a lot of these insurgents basically run off to the other side of the border, and they have sanctuaries there as well, which is again a very interesting dynamic, because when it comes to TTP and their terrorist activities, they're more of a militant organization, and BLA in itself is more towards a leftist Marxist organization, which is not religious at all. And even in that case, the TTP is supporting the BLA. In your introduction, you basically mentioned the Majid Brigade, which is element within the BLA which conducts suicide operations, especially against the law enforcement agencies of Pakistan and also Chinese interests in Pakistan as well. Where are they getting this training from? It is getting all of this capacity and training from TTP, which is supporting the BLA in conducting these activities against the state of Pakistan, and also investments that are coming in to Pakistan. So this kind of shows that they are not pro socio-economic development of Balochistan. Why? Because when, as you also mentioned, there will be socio-economic development, then their main agenda is compromised. So this insurgency is now moving towards more separatism, and for separatism to succeed, they don't want socio-economic development to happen in Balochistan. So this is a very good point that the government of Pakistan has when it has to now launch a counter-narrative campaign which needs to seep into the grassroots of Balochistan, and the people of Balochistan need to realize and need to internalize this message from Pakistan that socio-economic development of Balochistan is a top priority of the Federation. They are bringing in investment from outside Pakistan as well, and we can also give an example of the socio-economic development of GCC countries, especially Dubai. Do you seriously think that Dubai had like local minerals? It's a desert. Where did all the investment come from? It came from foreign investors, from Europe, from the West, from the Middle East, and they all gave an environment which was conducive to development. They came up with policies that welcomed investment, and all of that investment was not coming from local population. Same is the case in Balochistan. And this security situation that you mentioned is not conducive to development. This is not conducive to foreign direct investment coming to Balochistan. And this plays into the agenda of the separatists. And the government of Pakistan needs to come up with the counter-narrative campaign, non-kinetic measures, as Air Vice Marshal Saab also mentioned, that the youth of Balochistan need to be engaged at a priority. They need to be made a part of the political inclusion and the political development of Balochistan. Because we all know that Pakistan has a very young population. Over 60% of Pakistan is under the age of 30. So all of this youth now has opportunities. They are going to universities. The federal government of Pakistan, through various scholarship means, through Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, gives the Baloch youth scholarships to study in all across Pakistan and all different disciplines across various different universities. Now, after these young people graduate, they need to be integrated into the economic system. They need to get employment, and they also need to become part of the political inclusion process, the democratic process of Balochistan. So these are the measures that need to be taken at a priority level. People of Balochistan historically have felt marginalized, and I stand with them when it comes to their claims. But now, whatever the government is doing, when it comes to non-kinetic measures, it also needs to be communicated. And the people at the grassroots level, especially the young people, need to be integrated, one, into the economic development and also into the political inclusion system as well. And I think that is one area where historically the inclusion of youth has been a bit compromised. That is one area where we can take positive steps as well.
Definitely, including Wajih Abbasi, as you've raised some very important points towards the solutions, and we've also been joined by Brigadier Shahryar Khan. We'll also include him in the conversation. Mr. Wajih Abbasi, when we talk about the problems that they're facing, and in light of what Mr. Shahryar Khan had to say, what measures do you think the government and the state of Pakistan can take to, of course, stop this exploitation of the Baloch youth by these hostile elements? Well, I think we're having trouble connecting with Mr. Wajih Abbasi again. We'll move towards Brigadier Shahryar. Sir, thank you for being part of the conversation as we were discussing Balochistan security landscape and the statements that came out from the 268th Corps Commanders Conference. When we talk about the socio-economic development in Balochistan, it is a factor that contributes to what we're seeing and this surge in terrorism, that we're also seeing how the hostile forces are exploiting the people of Balochistan to carry out their nefarious designs and carry out terrorism, how they're trying to destabilize the province amidst all these efforts for development, such as the Gawada port, the Gawada International Airport, and how there's work being done on the CPEC with regards to infrastructural development as well. We're seeing that in these modern times, in this digital era, there's the fifth generation warfare and how it is also taking effect with regards to propaganda regarding Balochistan. How do you comment on that?
I think Balochistan is basically stakes are very high, and Pakistan is Balochistan, Balochistan is Pakistan as far as the future is concerned. Now, Pakistan is to actually fight on in four domains. One is, of course, military, which is already doing it in basically fighting the terrorists, especially sub-nationalist groups, which I don't call, they are not Baloch, but they are basically terrorists like BLA. And then this is a triangle of support, basically from India, one corner India, one corner in Kabul, and the front line you have these two main organizations, TTP in KP and BLA in Balochistan. And but focusing on Balochistan, basically this triangle has to be dealt simultaneously. So I'm sure on Afghanistan, a lot of measures have been taken regionally, diplomatically, militarily, intelligence sharing, convincing them, but somehow it appears that so far they're not convinced. So Pakistan has to adopt the hard state stance and fight the terrorists inside, and also in case there is a requirement, then we can go and strike across. There are a lot of leverages in Pakistan that we have already discussed number of times. Those could be applied. Now, in terms of India, or for India, I think actually we need to now cut that hand. It supports terrorism, especially the intelligence agency like Research Analysis Wing or Doval's Cabal, which financially and militarily or physically supports sub-nationalist groups in Balochistan. And the only way I think is going for offensive defense as per Doval's strategy. That Pakistan should also start playing its card in occupied Kashmir, Indian Punjab, Indian North, East, and Indian South. And maybe you'll start seeing these, because otherwise I don't think so they're going to recoil. The only way is that they should be paid in the same coin. Now, within Balochistan, I think there are three, four things. One is, of course, fighting the terrorists physically. The other is engaging the youth of Balochistan, which I think the current government is doing, including the Balochistan government, empowering them and making them stakeholders, and also, fighting the information war on mainstream media and social media. That is critical. Well, a lot of it is happening with support from Western countries and from India. And of course, there are some of their dissident sardars like Harbiar Mari or Bamdar Bukti, or some of the other tribes leaders sitting outside. So this social media war has to be fought. As you mentioned, the hybrid war has to be won. So that's where I think one is, of course, strong social media response. The other is, of course, mainstream media, and also highlighting, developments in Balochistan. The positive developments like Recordec will start producing in 2 years. Gwadar has become already inaugurated as an international airport and seaport. And then, of course, there are plethora of other developments related to human resource and basically low youth. And then, of course, is the political side, in which I think one is, of course, legally or constitutionally, we have to do away with these B category B areas and make the entire Balochistan like at par with the rest of the Pakistan category A areas so the police can operate as a frontline law enforcement agency all across the province. Capacity
Brigadier Wakar, there's also something that I'd like to address, but I think we're having trouble with connectivity issues. We've also been joined again by Wajih Abbasi. So, as we were talking about the security landscape in Balochistan and how the hostile elements were exploiting the youth of Balochistan, we're living in a modern era, a digital era, where fifth generation warfare is also a big problem for many countries. Pakistan faces one of it. We see propaganda on social media. We see propaganda being done against CPEC, against Balochistan province. How do you think Pakistan, the state of Pakistan, can actually take action against all this propaganda, against all this disinformation, misinformation, and this 5G war that we're seeing, and how it can engage the youth in more economic uplift and socio uplift?
Yeah, of course, this modern techniques of social media and internet and all these things have made misinformation and disinformation very potent weapon. The misinformation campaigns were very active even previously also, but these new technologies have made them very potent. They have made it very they have made it very important. And the mobile phone within the hand of every person has made him prone to propaganda, all sort of propaganda. And the worst thing is that people through social media you get the message which you want to get. So it makes it's very important to have a counter narrative. And the state of Pakistan, and not only state of Pakistan, everybody who is in love of the country, who wants the country to get united and get development, and who wants people to get the true perspective, should put in their own perspective also, and they give help to this thing to build the counter narrative. And we must have this narrative in our homeland. Unfortunately, in this country, it has become fashionable to say that there are some of the regions are underdeveloped, or some of the regions are underdeveloped because of this thing or that thing. So that makes it easier for the counter forces to have their propaganda to influence their own people. So we have to not only to engage the youth, but we have to engage every person in that province also, and every person outside those provinces also, in other areas, to get them to true perspective, to get them the counter narrative of the state's narrative and the narrative of united and developed Pakistan. So that makes it very important. And for this thing, we have to counter those negative propaganda also. We have to use the legal methods. We have recent changes in the PECA Act and all those type of things. State has that legal weapons in its sense that can also be used. State can also use its own resources. So that's important, that we have to counter this both in narrative building also, and in countering the negative propaganda.
Definitely important points raised. Coming towards Mr. Shahryar, when we talk about modern problems, they require modern solutions, as you mentioned earlier as well. When we talk about this propaganda war and this war of the fifth generation, how social media and how the media as a tool is being used to carry out propaganda, how it is being used to exploit the people, exploit the masses, and how hostile forces, as Air Vice Marshal and other panelists also mentioned, how there's external forces playing their part in, of course, carrying out this whole destabilization process. What options do you think Pakistan has, such as cultural exchange programs and getting and creating a more inclusive environment in Balochistan province, or engaging the youth towards more healthier activities so they can shun these negative propagandas?
So, Rafae, there needs to be a holistic approach when it comes to our counter-terrorism strategy. Under even the Azm-e-Istehkam operation, one part of it is kinetic, which focuses more on intelligence-based operations and more kinetic means of dealing with insurgencies. The other part of that is the non-kinetic domain, and that would come under the countering violent extremism or the social cohesion aspect of the project. And this, I personally believe that in an insurgency, that sometimes becomes more important than the kinetic measures. When it comes to that, there are like a lot of different models that have been applied locally as well as internationally as well. We have a lot of models that have been applied in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and a lot of countries which have gone through insurgencies, they have gone through conflict, and they move towards a post-conflict scenario in which all of these strategies can be applied. So a holistic countering violent extremism strategy, which again is the mandate of NACTA, by the way, which has also worked on developing an improved version of the National Action Plan, and the domain of NACTA again at one aspect is interagency coordination, in which all the departments that are related to security and when it comes to service delivery as well, they can coordinate all of their initiatives under the umbrella of NACTA. Other than that, NACTA also has a mandate of developing countering violent extremism policies as well as implementation mechanisms as well. Now there needs to be a strategy in which NACTA basically shares the strategy of countering violent extremism, which they have also very recently developed, and it was passed by the Cabinet of Pakistan, and now they have developed a national prevention of violent extremism policy. It is now in the public domain. Now that strategy or that policy needs to be implemented, especially in the province of Balochistan, on a priority basis. And that basically has a lot of like aspects that cater to the political disillusionment of the province. They also focus on socio-economic development. They also focus a lot on the political inclusion of the local population. Now, when we basically talk about including the youth of Balochistan into the mainstream political development, political inclusion, economic and socio-economic empowerment, there needs to be a policy and that basically incorporates the learnings from the policy and implements it on ground. We can basically launch a lot of like programs in schools, colleges and universities of Balochistan. We can have programs in which the youth of Balochistan are provided with employment opportunities. All of these international partners that are investing in Balochistan, there needs to be a holistic strategy that a certain amount of jobs will go to the youth of Balochistan. When it comes to the Gwadar airport, the socio-economic development that is happening in Gwadar, there should be a certain quota for the local population. All of these models are already there. These models have been applied very successfully in GCC countries. We can learn a lot from their development model. We can also apply models that have been developed in Malaysia, Indonesia, and countries that have a lot of like multi-ethnic populations like in Pakistan. So a lot of work has already been done. The only issue is the implementation of all of these policies that are already there. The integration of all of these policies into the implementation mechanisms at the provincial level. So that is where there needs to be a lot more coordination between the government of Balochistan. There needs to be a political consensus. Right now, I also unfortunately see that the political consensus to cater to or to counter this insurgency unfortunately is still missing. So that is where we need to start from. Get all of these relevant stakeholders from the provincial level, bring them over and like develop a holistic strategy in which they also need to be made part of the solution, rather than having a lot of like political representation that does not agree with the strategy of the federal government. So a lot of like political consensus with a holistic countering violent extremism and social cohesion strategy, along with the socio-economic development that we have already discussed.
That's a very pragmatic approach that you've highlighted, Shahryar, but there's one element that I would also like to ask you with regards to that. As was praised in the Corps Commanders Conference, the district coordination committees as well, and as you mentioned, the political stakeholders need to be brought on the table. Do you think the political leadership that needs to be brought onto the table needs to trickle down to the local bodies level so there can be better consensus and better connectivity of those representatives within the community, within the society of Balochistan at the grassroots level?
Yes, definitely, Rafae. When it comes to the political inclusion that I have been mentioning, that basically seeps into the grassroots level. And the more empowerment you give to the youth of Pakistan, that they basically feel that they're in control of their destiny. And if they're like working towards the development of the province, they would gain employment, they would gain social mobility, and they will become a part of the mainstream development of Pakistan. The issue basically comes in when all of these young people, given scholarships from the federal government through the Higher Education Commission, they come from Balochistan, far-flung areas from Balochistan. They come, they study in Islamabad, they come study in Lahore, and all of these developed cities of Pakistan, and then they basically compare that to the socio-economic deprivation of the province where they come from. So this like comparison and this like sense of deprivation that develops causes this whole issue of security. It also enhances the narrative of the terrorist organizations that are already operating there. So it gives a breeding fertile ground for their narrative to seep into the local population. So we need to work on two levels. One, all of this economic development that is taking place, one, it needs to be inclusive. Secondly, it also needs to be communicated properly. I think right now there is a lack or there is a disconnect with the development that is taking place and the awareness of that development to the local population. So that needs to be connected. Secondly, there needs to be some sort of like mechanism in which young people get an opportunity to become part of the mainstream political process in Balochistan. We need to empower them, we need to give them trust, and we also need to give them avenues in which they can basically gain employment and also political inclusion.
Definitely a very pragmatic approach that you have highlighted, Mr. Shahryar, and of course we hope that such suggestions, valuable suggestions, are taken into consideration with regards to Balochistan and a resolution to the problems that the Balochistan province faces. That's a wrap up from the perspective as we were discussing Balochistan's turbulent security landscape and the Corps Commanders conference, the statements that came out of it, and the resolve that was reiterated to wipe out the menace of terrorism and to carry out the counter-terrorism operations with vigor and determination. I'd like to thank all of our guests, Shahryar Khan, security analyst, Air Vice Marshal Ijaz Malik, Wajih Abbasi and Brigadier Waqar Khan. I'd like to thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. See you all same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.